Welcome to the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And we're going to need a bigger boat, Spook.
Spook,
What?
what'd you think?
Fuck.
So you said you were pretty angry
I'll calm down a
Saturday.
bit. I'll calm down a bit now.
I haven't.
Oh, well, let's get angry. Let's get nuts.
Let's get nuts. All right. Limping into the break, we acquitted ourselves pretty well, set ourselves up for the second half of the season, come back, lost to Gold Coast. I know people keep saying that they're undefeated down there. Still think they're a pretty average side.
They're still undefeated down there.
Yeah. Lost to Essendon, who's only won one game in 4 weeks. Guess who was against? Lost to Geelong, form's been better. But could you have found more insipid performances?
It's been a bit of a consistent down. Is it a downward spiral? Plateauing probably is a.
I wrote.
Is a. I mean, we've lost these 3 games by a couple of kicks, so we haven't been thrashed. Not that that's justification enough, but we're slipping
Into shit.
into shit.
Yeah. I actually think if you go back to the North game, which is the last game before the bye.
Last game we won.
Yeah. There's been a pattern where there's been no pressure around the opposition ball carrier.
No.
And I thought this Friday night exemplified it, where Cameron won 121 taps. I don't think I saw one go to advantage or to a teammate. And
we got smashed in the centre clearances.
Yeah, and Geelong just waltzed
It was like
it
having
out.
Grundy back.
Yeah. And it was Geelong just waltzed it out time and time and time again. However, Essendon did that also, and Gold Coast did that, and North Melbourne did that for 3 quarters. Where's the pressure around the fucking ball carrier?
Well, there was none in the first couple of minutes.
And, again, they scored 3 goals in, about 12 seconds?
Did they not hear the siren go? Did they just stand around like chess pieces, wondering what the fuck was going on?
I'll tell you what the fuck's going on with this club. Last year, we said, we've got a relatively average list, and for 2 years, McRae has forged this really good system that appreciates the team and gives guys roles, and then they perform. However, that only works while the system's working, and the system only works while the top end of the side is performing. Since the bye, and if you go back to the North game, to the last quarter and a half, Nick Dacos got off the leash. He was being tagged really well. He got off the leash, and his performance brought us back into it. Since the bye, Nick has got the quantity of stats, but he hasn't really had the influence. I'm not criticising him, but once he actually has that level of input into the side, then the others start falling into his wake. And this is what this side apparently needs, is this 21-year-old kid to fucking have a free vote, best on-ground performance before any of the rest of them can actually do something. Mm-hmm. And I think, they brought up the average listing, because you look at this list and it's you got Nick at the top. Or actually, look at it this way. Of the 23 we fielded, how many A-grade elite players are out there on current form?
1.
That's it. Darcy Moore's gone to shit. People will keep using the Nathan Murphy excuse, but fucking get somewhere near the ball or near your opponent, one or the other.
Do you think that's because Nathan Murphy's not there?
Well, there was that one early on, which sort of there was a contest at the top of the square. The spillage went over his head to a Geelong player. I can't remember what it was. Right on the goal line, pretty much turned around and kicked the goal. And Darcy was in the middle there, so it's I don't know what Murphy would have fixed there that could have let him. I think the thing with Darcy Moore, is when's the last time you recall him going for a fucking mark?
Mm.
He looks shot, and the track watchers watching training are saying he's actually running fine. So there's no problem injury wise. Just psychologically, where the fuck is he?
And I think that's a lot to do with the problem. I mean, that example just exemplifies the way that we've been beaten the last 3 weeks. I mean, we've been beaten by uncontested ball usage, which is farcical, because we run around like fucking headless chickens in between contests.
It looks very much, as we were saying, like the Buckley years, the 16, 17.
All the cohesion is gone at the moment, and it's baffling to work out why or how. I mean, it can't be skill level, because the sides that are out there are still, even though we've had the injuries, are still reasonably seasoned since the bye, but something's sort of something snapped, or I still think it's as we get closer to finals, well, not anymore for us, that they're just realising that they just don't have that same drive or fight like they did, and they just don't think they're gonna do it, and they're almost like they're running away from the problem Well, literally.
Well, you're not seeing any intensity from quite a few of them.
No.
I know some people will call me petty, but and I mentioned this to you earlier. It pissed me off post game seeing fucking Pendlebury have a joke with Dangerfield.
I can't believe how petty you are.
I would want Pendlebury as a senior player to be, just really pissed off and saying, and I know he's not captain, but just saying, this isn't good enough. We have to get better than this. I'm sick of watching fucking The Ring pre-game where Darcy Moore gives some impassioned speech, an example to which he doesn't actually, aspire or fulfill himself. So that really frustrates me. Jordan Ngoe obviously has the OP because he looks like he's really just struggling to cover ground at all. And we'll talk about this earlier. Like when pre-season people go, no, he's the best he's ever been, the fittest he's ever been. And like I extrapolate that, well, he probably did a lot of work and he's actually aggravated the condition to have OP. He had the 4 or 5 weeks off, whatever it was, the abdominal strain, came back, looked alright in that first game, so he was obviously relatively fresh, but he's just sort of declined back into very ordinary. So, and then you get the other guys there, like Pendles hasn't really been that good since he came back. Sidebottom's got in quantity. I don't think he's really got in damage. That whole defensive six, just there's absolutely no run there from anyone. Noble sort of tried, Markov tried to an extent, but you're really not getting any counter attack. I mean, Darcy Moore's the other one. There's he used to give you a lot of that himself. And I know people will be looking at the damn McStay to fix things. The forward line's not the fucking problem. No, it's around the ball carrier.
It's the midfield. I mean, it's even like the examples you're given where Markov and Noble are breaking lines and they're delivering the ball, but it's still falling apart in the middle. And even when we do win it, the delivery into the forward line is haphazard at the moment. I mean, there was the amount of times that you saw players like Kruger that are running with their back to the ball into the forward line.
Yeah.
You should be leading forward towards the ball. Wouldn't that be a cohesive structure that you'd be doing? But you're just rushing back numbers to try and win something inside of the forward line, and we're just fucking being caught out second-footed all the time. Flat-footed, second-footed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the foot's on the other hand.
That's it. It's frustrating to watch.
Yeah, the thing that I really hate is the lack of leadership from certain players. Again, you're letting it all fall on this 21-year-old kid. He obviously wants to be out there and fucking make a difference. No one else actually seems to show that intensity. I'll actually say, the Goey, when he's been up and running, he seems to have shown a bit of that, but he really is a shadow of himself. The guy you really got to look at is Darcy Moore as captain. He's got to be the one who does something. Just anything. These fucking, as you point out, these goofy grins when he comes out, trying to be all relaxed and casual, then grabbing the players in the circle and giving them a pep talk. What's it all for? So you can play, not you specifically, but all of you can play like shit. What I'd like to see fucking Darcy Moore do? I'd like to see what Darcy Moore, what I expect Nick Maxwell will do, is just start pointing at people. You fucking get him. You run. Where were you there? You don't see any of that in defence.
No, and part of that leadership is to sort of lead on the field as well in terms of calling the shots of where you should be, or when you fuck up, you should be, not admonished badly for it, but you should be made aware of where the mistake was. There's a couple of times where you see them where they leak a goal in defence at the moment.
And they're giggling?
No, they're getting angry at each other, but they're angry at each other, not constructively talking about, well, we maybe should have done this. I'm not fucking part of it on the ground. But that seems to be the impression that you've lost that moment. You just go, what the fuck, you should have been, or whatever, but not in a constructive way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I don't know who the marshal is back there. You go back sort of over the great defences I've had, go back to 210-11, both Maxwell and Heath Shaw, they used to bark out quite a bit they used to shout quite a bit, and they used to get quite passionate. So I don't, obviously you don't want to get too demonstrative, but I don't see any of that sort of really hey, let's get this back. You don't see people sort of running around going, come on, fucker, where is it? It's just really just passionless, it feels like. And then you get that, the midfield, it's like, I know sort of they're really probably missing Mitchell as being that guy who'll really burrow in there, but who the fuck else is doing anything? They all look flat-footed. They all look like they're all waiting for someone else to do something. And then when they get it, it's like this little sideways movement where they're creating a string to just sort of get out of the congestion, but it's never fucking going anywhere. Whereas all 4 teams of the last that we've played is just they get it and they just stream forward.
Yeah, and we're doing the opposite there. I mean, the amount of times that we will handball to someone under pressure who's immediately under pressure, it's fucking head smacking on the coffee table time. It's like, well, where's your awareness? Just because someone's calling for it, you're still meant to use your eyes. They don't know that maybe someone's about to bear down on them. You don't deliver the ball to them when they're immediately going to get caught.
I think that's a deal.
It really
thing.
stymies the fucking flow that we used to have.
I think it's a deal thing, though. I mean, the guy running shouldn't be calling for, because there's time, like you said, you're running into free up opponents. Why are you still calling for it?
But I would say that's the awareness. But that's where you're going to have to rely on your teammate to say, well, fuck, mate, you've got a few around you. I'm going to send it over your head. Or here's a fucking good idea. I'll kick it.
Yeah, that could be
at the moment, I think we try and engage that running game that we used to have and get into that chaos mode. Like the amount of fucking toe pokes that are going on at the moment.
Yeah, it's that.
It's like we're trying to move the ball forward, but you're not doing it with any great efficiency when you're pushing it along the ground.
It's an imprimatur, just move the ball forward at any cost, which I think is always a danger too, because it's like, okay, so that's all you're doing now. There's no real design to it. I mean, I fucking hate volleyball taps in football. Like, when a player taps it to another. That's got to be the last resort. If you can take the ball and handle it clean, that should always be an option. So I hate when people sort of rely on anything much easier, and I think Collingwood sometimes fall into the trap of like, just keep moving it forward, even though it's now working greatly to your detriment, where you probably need some organised chaos or something. Like, I'll take the ball, I'll kick it, I'll handle it, whatever the case, but let's actually control the ball for the moment rather than just fucking turn it over. And then what's happening is, as happened with the Buckley teams of 17 and 16 and that, is everyone's pushed so far forward. The moment you turn the ball over, everyone's now grotesquely out of position, and the opposition counter-attack, and we've got no one around anywhere. I know you're a big fan of this. Isaac Quainer on Jeremy Cameron.
I found that really fucking baffling. And the justification is I think, Moore played on him last game and he kicked 7-4. So naturally you put someone half his size on him because that'll work. Now, he even justified in the press conference saying, well, you kicked 3 this time round, well, that's a win. But fucking Geelong's ball movement at time was pretty fucking bad. I don't think that had anything to do with him being beaten by Quain. I think the delivery to him was pretty putrid. It was just like a really bad justification. If it gets down to that, why don't we just fucking play Noble on every giant that's out there as well?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you just get in between their shoelaces and they can come crashing to the ground. I mean, at the moment, if that's your best option, I would have rather put fucking Dean on there and say, look, it's going to be an instruction for you or a learning moment, whatever. But you're young, you've got a bit of pace, mobility. Just fucking get in his face, get in front of him. Have someone chop out every now and then. I think that would have been just as effective, and that then Quaynor can go back to doing whatever Quaynor used to do well.
But the thing too is, look, I could understand the logic of playing Quaynor if it was like, look, you're going to give up some height.
Some.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
All right, but you're going to give up that. But you know what I want you to do? Every time there's a chance, run the fuck off him. Bring him down to the wing. Bring him down to half forward. Tire him. I mean, he's a really good athlete, but, use your mobility, your agility to exploit, that he's a key forward. So keep running off him. And that would have made sense to me. It's like, that's why we're going to play someone smaller, because we're going to, counter-attack through him as the defensive plot in terms of, like, Cameron as a, defensive type forward, if he was playing in that capacity. There was none of that, And I recall, like, go back to fucking years. I remember Craig Kelly was playing on Tony Lockett, and the instruction must have been with Kelly, just run off him at all costs. And Kelly, I think, from memory, had 2 shots at goal. This is from full back. So he's run forward just to keep dragging Lockett up and tire him out. So I'd understand playing a smaller guy if that was the flip side of it. This is what we're going to try and get out of this matchup. But there wasn't that. I mean, I don't remember the last time Quaynor was ran. He's been, I don't want to single him out, but he's been fucking terrible this year.
Because they're missing Murphy.
Yeah. But there's a lot of them being terrible.
I saw they had a little heart-shaped pillow with a picture of Murphy on resting against one of the point posts.
Well, what do you do with these? This is the real quandary now. You're now 12th, 13th, or equal 13th.
We're 12th.
Yep. So
equal 13th on points, but we're ahead on percentage.
Yeah, but only a little bit, and we're playing Hawthorn, so that's going to
should go well.
Yep. So you're actually in a position now, if you don't make finals, you're going to hand like a pick 8 to Fremantle and a second rounder for Schultz.
Fuck.
And that trade for Ginnivan's actually, they're going to get the advantage out of it, outside of the fact they also got Ginnivan.
It's a double backfire, isn't it? At the moment, look, unless a miracle happens and we turn it around. And look, to be honest with you, I don't think anyone really thought at the time that we'd arse end like this. I thought that we'd maintain. Well, we probably expected Hawthorn to be dribblers down the bottom.
Well, they did, because I was looking up what we paid for Schultz, and Graham Wright says that very diplomatically, about Hawthorn's still rebuilding, so we're sort of expecting that will work in our favour. That
well, clearly
drop.
the hand's on the other foot now.
Yeah. So,
and the same with our performance. I think we probably thought that being premiers and all, stupidly, that we'd be top 4-ish again, and that would have devalued the pick we're handing over. But it's looking like a fucking calamity outcome now. That if we're giving him a top 10 first rounder,
and then second rounder,
and then where's the second rounder coming back to us? Will we pick about 38 or something?
I don't know.
It's and for what? We've got a short little potato.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people had an uproar, and there's nothing against Lucky Schultz, but it's like, is that what you'd use a first rounder on?
No. It's. I mean, look, he's okay. He's just not worth what we've paid for him.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, again,
and yet they filled a hole that we didn't really need, which was the other baffling thing.
Yeah.
If your job was to come in and create defensive pressure on the forward line, well, it's only sort of half worked.
But does that surprise you how much they've misread the list needs? So they've let Adams go. So,
well, we addressed the 18 grand final loss with Dane Beams.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Have we learnt?
Well, this is a new administration in charge of the actual team, with McRae and Lepic and all that. So you've let Adams go, and you've told him you're probably not going to get midfield time. So you're thinking Finn McRae's going to come up, but then you've gone and taken Bytel and Sullivan in a supplemental draft, whatever it is, and then you've gone and taken Ned Long. So it's like you've told this guy you're probably not going to get a game, but now we're going to go ahead and draft free midfielders, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Again, the Ginnivan thing, it's very hard to comment around why they felt that's it, we're done, you can move on. I remember we were talking last year about Ginnivan, and you said one of your friends suggested he could become like a Dane Swan midfielder type. And we don't know, but the thing that shits me is you've put 3 years into this kid and then you've cut him loose, so what was the fucking point of the 3 years? You list us in this perilous state, so you're creating bigger holes now, and you traded the first rounder for a small forward when you've given up a premiership small forward now for a pick 34 or whatever the fuck it is, and you've given up a mid. You sort of it's like I don't understand the equation here. I understand Schultz is a much more defensively ferocious player than Ginnivan, but then you got like guys like Harrison and Richards and that sort of coming up too. It just sort of seems weird in the reading of the list.
I mean, two of the big deficiencies. I mean, you probably wouldn't have picked that Murphy was going to. Although, really, the
surely
signs
they
are
must
there.
have known.
I mean, after 9 concussions, you're thinking, maybe it's not going to be a long future here. But you.
Oh, hang on, just before you go on, sorry, just keep in mind what you're going to say. Do you seriously think they were so arrogant that they thought this guy who's been concussed in the grand final and it's like his 9th concussion is going to have a long stay in the game following this?
Well, he's just going to come good. Do you know why? Because we won the flag.
No, I'm serious, but that's because there was people on message boards and that saying he should retire for his own benefit or his own future, which and we were saying the same thing. You've had that many concussions, you're obviously prone to them. So did the club seriously blindly think he'll come good from, I think it was his 3rd concussion in the year also, and the way you have this sensitivity around concussion, there was never going to be like any hell, let's just go for it attitude. It was always going to be, you're always going to err on the side of caution.
And look, where I was going to go was if you're identifying, okay, well, there's an enormous risk that one of your key defensive tools is probably only going to play 3 more games. And I think even in the off season we talked about this. I can't remember what we said on this thing, but I likened him to a can of unstable deuteronium. For all the Lost in Space fans out there, there's that no matter what, he was going to explode at some point in terms of that's it, we're done. And you'd think it was going to be sooner rather than later. Surely that didn't escape the club either, like what you said. Now, if that's the case, when you go and look at where are we moving towards, we've got a lot of ageing players who aren't going to be here in a year or two. We're going to start a rebuild at some point inevitably. Wouldn't it make sense now to go and look for some more talls? Than Lockie Schultz if you're going to burn your first pick?
They took Josh Erie, who's, in the supplemental draft, whatever it is. And this is sort of...
But we talked before about this sort of stuff that, you know, if you're going to start this stuff seriously, your chances and your odds are better at going early in the draft for these type of need players. Not the Hail Marys.
But look, I don't mind them going for, like, you know, a little bit of experimentation with some of these lower draft picks.
Doing a lot of it, though.
But that's what I was going to say. It's very representative of what we do. It's like moneyball these options into the club, you know, and you're going back to like Frampton also, and, you know, Lipinski and sort of all these guys like real moneyball options. Is when you look at this side and you think, well, who's the genuine A-lister that you've pursued that you've landed? I mean, Tom Mitchell, sort of probably a high B grader. But what do you expect, you know? And the thing too, you should be looking at this list is, look, Pendles is 35 or 36 or whatever he is, and Sidebottom's 32. So they're two quality guys you're going to lose. And who are you bringing in? You're bringing in these guys who couldn't get games at St Kilda. It's like, do you really see... And that's what ends up happening with a lot of these clubs who think, let's just go for one more round. So you go back to Hawthorn, for example. They lose Hodge, they lose Mitchell. I know that's by their design, but then they bring Jager Romero and Tom Mitchell in. This is fucking Luke Hodge you're losing. Who do you think you're just going to replace him like that? You know, and Sam Mitchell also, with no disrespect intended to the other two, but, you know, they're fucking really, you know, they're elite players. Similarly with Richmond, you know, they're losing Cochin and they're bringing Taranto. Again, good players, but you can't just replace that sort of guy. So it really amazes me that Collingwood's not looking toward the, you know, the future a bit more. We spoke about this a little bit off camera, saying there's probably, I mean, we said this last year, you know, there's occasions they could have tried that Finn McRae for like 4, 5, 6 weeks to get games into him and prepare for the future. You know, you look at, like, you go back to 10 on the flag. I mean, ultimately, by the end of the year, Malthouse had Jared Blair and McCaffrey in the side. So he had like two guys who were virtual rookies. But we haven't done any of that. We've sort of gone all with what we know and, you know, haven't really had one eye on the future. It's just sort of like all in toward, let's win this fucking flag. And the thing is, you know, which we spoke about also, is like some of these guys, some of the senior guys, their output isn't that much higher than what you get from a young guy, and you'd also get an investment in the future. So, I know, that's really frustrating. How'd you feel about the fucking new interpretation of legal distance for a mark?
It was good, wasn't it? I mean, I just love the way that these things are sprung on people. Like, I think even Scott was having a whinge about it, but he loves to whinge no matter what. But, I mean, when you win the game, you tend not to go out and say too much negative about the umpiring. But even if he's sort of...
Well, he copped it for a second time, because years ago, Geelong played West Coast, and that's when they went really hard on the insufficient intent. And there was a lot of them pay that. And in the press conference after it, he goes, look, I'm fine if that's what it is, but you got to actually inform the coaches. And he goes, I don't blame the umpires, but someone's told them to pay that more. Same thing here.
It gives you no time to prepare. Yeah, I think that was just examples of some of the averageness across the board. I don't think I'd look at that game and say we lost it by any stretch, the umpiring. Some of it was frustrating, but...
No, I just brought that up as one of these fucking things the AFL does with umpiring.
It's mental to just, like I said, to spring it on them, and they're like, no one fucking knows what's going on until how many times do you have to have that surprise on you before it clicks in the boxes that, oh fuck, they're adjudicating this differently tonight, we have to quickly adjust.
Yeah.
Then you got to get messages out there. I think the players will see it and start. But it's a stupid way of dealing with it. Wouldn't you sort of have like a memo that come out the week and say, look, we're going to give this a little bit of focus just to give you a heads up, and but otherwise it's like entrapment.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the thing that shits me about that rule, regardless of, you know, this week when they were heavy on it or prior, you'll see like 4 that kicks that go 6 metres and they're fine, and there'll be one they'll pay, and it's like, well, you missed all the other ones. And I watched Melbourne Essendon last night too, and it was just like, why is that one a mark? That one's quite obviously a short kick. So they pay it like such a fucking lottery. That's the other really frustrating thing. And that's the way it's always been paid. There'll just be one called out of the blue. Now there's a couple being called out of the blue. But you see all these other kicks around, you go, well, they definitely haven't gone the distance, but you've allowed those to go through. And that's what shits me out a lot of the umpiring. It's just like, well, how do you expect the fucking players to know? You're so inconsistent on the application of that rule.
And the thing is, they'll do it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they fucking move on.
Yeah, so it'll become the novelty thing, yeah.
What was the point?
I don't know, because the AFL wants to prove that, I don't know, they're full of fuckheads. I'm having a drink. Go abuse someone while I have my beverage.
Nah, fuck it. What else you got on this?
Jeff Brown says will not be part of a selective round 0 going into the future.
What would it take him 3/4 of the year to come out with that statement? Would you stay at the start of the year when it was clearly a fucking disaster?
I guess he probably didn't want to seem to be whinging.
Oh, fuck him.
Yeah. I think next year that they should say, look, we're not going to start our season until round 4. We did that this year.
What's it? Extended holidays for everyone.
Josh Carmichael retires, another concussion.
How many have we had now, Collingwood? There's 2 this
All
year?
of them.
2?
Or him.
What the fuck is it, our concussion? I mean, I think Noble's the only one that's actually come back within the week. Everyone else just drifts off for weeks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do they just sit around watching Punch Drunk Love?
Well, you were curious during the game. Lockie Schultz and Tom Stewart collided head on head. Lockie Schultz goes through concussion protocols and Tom Stewart gets a little bit of blood wiped off him and goes back out there.
Geelong have a habit of that with their doctor, don't they? He just reading a book or something at the time. I didn't see it, so therefore it didn't happen. We don't have to test for it.
I think, Tom, because you see Tom Stewart had the blood in his eye.
But it's the same fucking... They did that with Cameron. Like, you could barely fucking walk a couple of weeks ago. Surely you don't leave it up to the doctors, because there's got to be a bias there. Clearly Geelong's out to prove that. Surely it should be an independent medical adjudicator that goes to, you only need one to go on the ground and say, look, okay, I'm not happy with that, bring him in for assessment.
Well,
instead of the Geelong guy going, was it Stewart? What's that blood? Is it blood? Really blood? Are you sure it's blood? It's not the red line from the advertising on the grass?
No, I think Stewart goes, I can't see it if I can't open my eye. Cut me, Mick. Well, I don't understand that. How one guy goes from the same incident that knocks both of them out for quite a while, like they're both just laying there prone, and I don't know if the AFL is going to issue a please explain to Geelong or what, because I found that really, really dubious. Anthony Rocker's cancer fight.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's pretty average news, isn't it?
Yeah. Good luck to Anthony Rocker.
Yeah, all the best. I know he watches.
Oh, who doesn't?
A lot of people, apparently.
I was going to say something about fucking playing the problem side this week, Hawthorn.
Oh, Hawthorn, the problem side. We playing them this week?
What do you do? So, in the reserves, I don't know what happened.
I think you roll over Meekly.
So, Dan McStay played a half. Do you give him a full game, or do you bring him up into the AFL to solve everything?
I think they're going to give him another one in the VFL. He actually looked... I didn't miss the first quarter. I watched the second quarter, and I didn't bother watching much after halftime. It was only really just out of interest. And I watched it on the streaming service. The VFL streaming.
Oh, is that the way it goes? I never watch it.
It was like dial-up.
Was it on KO?
No, it was quicker than KO. He looked all right. He kicked one goal or two goals.
I don't watch anything.
He set up a few. He was moving well and marking well.
We'll fix that.
He'll come back and he'll have an impact. We'll still be in the 18 by then, won't we? We'll be moving into a new tier. Will it drop that far?
I was going to play Hawthorn. Hawthorn's got a reason.
Even Richmond are looking up saying, watch out.
Hawthorn's got a reason to be good midfield. What do you do to fucking fix this shit? So you can't just rely on Nick Dacre. So, I think every opposition's worked out. Tag him as hard as we can, and that just kills the whole side. So what do? You can't rely on Nick to sort of do it all and, win the hard ball and then go get the loose ball and then finish it and all that, which is what the fuck's happening. Lockie Schultz will miss because of the concussion protocol in all likelihood. There's no one really coming back as far as I know. So how do you fix this midfield? Because the whole problem is in the midfield. It's
cattle, though. You can't bring in what you don't have. From what I saw of the VFL game on the weekend, that Finn just was a non-contributor. That Bytel did all right, but I don't think he's the answer, or bringing Sullivan back's the answer.
But the interesting thing is, you bring these guys in. So Ned Long was brought. I didn't really see him in the centre that much. So, and when they brought McRae, they were playing him as half forward. It's like maybe you play these guys where they're meant to be played, rather than putting him in positions foreign to them and then dropping them when they don't fucking perform to expectations, because that's not who they are.
I'd almost throw caution to the wind, or I don't know if that's the right saying in this instance. I'd just say fuck it and put McRae,
Craig McRae in the middle.
Get in there and fucking earn some extra money.
He'll get better. It's a work in progress.
I'd put McKinn's in there.
Yeah.
And say, look, just fucking go for it. He was copping criticism on the fucking boards for his one mark, one kick game.
No,
he fucking came on with about 13 seconds to go.
Yeah, I know.
What the fuck do people expect? Yeah, but again, look, that was just a pointless substitution at the end. I mean, what's the point of 10 minutes of run time? You weren't going to come on as... He's not an impact player.
No.
But yeah, I think you need... They're obviously going with you need someone of a similar height and build of Pendles in that midfield. I mean, that'd be a good step in the right direction, I think, just to give him some midfield time in there. What we really need is someone who's going to put their fucking head over the ball and dig it out, which is what Mitchell does. We're missing.
And Adams.
Yeah, but we've got no one. I think that was supposed to be Finn's little speciality, but...
it's not.
Well, apparently he kicks 3 goals and that's a change of role for him. It's hard to know what the fucking answer is.
With the limited personnel available, I mean, what do you do with the defence? The defence is a massive fucking issue. Do you bring Dean back? I mean,
I think you've
Frampton
just got to keep getting games into Dean.
I actually thought Frampton had an interesting game. I thought, like, man on man, he really struggled. But at times when he actually had the ball in hand, he showed a little bit of poise of what he was going to do. But in terms of Darcy Moore, you can't just leave him in there because he looks fucking lost. I was saying this last week. If he's not injured, I would fucking play him in the ruck. We'll just go, fuck this. You cannot have a performance. That performance by Darcy Cameron was disgraceful. 58 tap outs. I'd really be curious what the taps to advantage were because I didn't see a fucking single one. Unless you count the ones at Geelong, then there was 58.
Unfortunately, it's not a stat.
Yeah, but in terms... Thank you, Kane Collins. But no, it's just... You got to change that midfield dynamic, and that is not fucking working. Josh, average. He wasn't horrible, but he wasn't like anything influential. You know, whether you free up Quaynor and you go in the fucking middle as a senior body who's got a little bit of class. You can't really do it with Noble and Markov. And then if you go forward in terms of, like, I don't know, I mean, like, again, when I was doing research on the Schultz trade, you know, Graham Wright was saying, you can run through the middle. It's like, well, he would have been an interesting one to play in the middle as like a little tank. But they got to fucking change it because that midfield's getting killed. It's horrible. I haven't seen anything that bad
since the Buckley era.
No, I was going to say since Disney Star Wars.
Yeah, no, it's a cattle equation. You know, you can only work with what you've got, and there's not much there at the moment. It's a real tough one to work out.
You know what I like?
Because anything you're going to try is just speculative.
Well, the other thing I'd like is for McRae to start like next week, the coach to start the team next week, and just so I can have Nick at half forward because he's going to be tagged immediately. Just fucking break up.
Well, they roughhoused him last year and busted his leg.
Yeah.
They're going to do the same thing. Straight off the bat, they're going to start roughhousing.
So even like someone like Maynard, if you throw him in the middle for a bit and just go, we're going to change this. The way we're playing is fucking terrible. You know Nick's going to be tagged, and obviously they're saying, well, you're going to have to learn how to deal with it. But if you actually sort of line him up outside of the middle to start the game, at least it throws their plans into somewhat of disarray. I think I've probably told this story. I remember years ago going to a Geelong Carlton game. When Blight was coach, talking about early 90s, and I can't remember, it was like Couch and Bairstow, I think. He started them on the bench, and there was 2 Carlton taggers that just running around like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? The guys are meant to be on the ground. What do we do? And they were really confused for about the first few minutes, and then Blight brought them on. And I just thought that was really interesting. It was lateral thinking to sort of shake up the status quo. But with what we've got, you can't duplicate, or you can't fake intensity.
No, it's like Desire's just dropped off the chart. It's just hard to work out why. I mean, look at the competition at the moment. It's a fucking scatter mess of anyone's almost within spitting distance of the 8 can still get in, and anyone. Well, apart from, I think, Sydney, they're the only ones that are really, truly, probably safe in first place.
In top 2.
From 2 to 10, it's wide open.
Well, you had an interesting point that, like, Sydney's lost a few, Carlton's lost a few, Collingwood's lost a few, I mean, Essendon's lost a few. Are all these clubs upping training loads? Although, having said that, if they're all upping training loads and you're playing a side who's up their training loads, then you're all back on equal footing.
I can only assume that I can't remember whether I said this last week, so apologies if I'm repeating, but you would have gone into the bye saying, well, our first 3 games after that are probably the most winnable out of the rest of the, Richmond aside, out of that slide home, that maybe they've upped the loads early to come home strong.
Week, yeah.
If that's the case, it's fucking backfired because you're now coming into A pretty tough run, Richmond aside, even though they'll probably beat us because that's just who we're becoming at the moment. My tongue is in my cheek. I don't think they'll beat us. Will they beat us? I don't think they will. We're coming up to our bogey side, our massive problem side. They always trouble us, Hawthorn. They've troubled us for the last 72 years, that side. It's not a fait accompli. We'll win this week. We could lose by 10 goals.
So you missed the 8. What happens?
Oh, it's a fucking disaster. I think we're on track at the moment with our slide. It's still 6 games to go. We could still have a spark and pull off a couple of miraculous wins. But at the moment, the way that we're plummeting, this is the worst premiership defence. I don't know whether people like using that word. In the making at the moment, we could finish lower than any Premier ever has.
Oh, I know Bulldogs missed the finals after 16.
Yeah, and Geelong did, I think they just missed out. And but this is the lowest ladder position of a Premier.
The other one I'd check would be Hawthorn in 8 at 9.
And that could be a telling sign that we got as much out of that list as we possibly could get. And it's just broken this year. Probably a little bit earlier than we all hope, but it could be a gross reality that it's done.
Well, the way I look at it, like I said, is you look at prior to bye, we were competitive, only lost the 1 game, granted we drew 2, had really good wins against Carlton and Melbourne, who, while we were very under strength, but the Carlton game, Nick Dacos was clearly best on ground. I can't remember the Melbourne game, but he was pretty good. I think he actually got subbed off though. But again, if he has that best on ground performance, then others sort of fall into the wake and start doing their shit.
Yeah, but it's still, it's like what you said, it's unfair to place that much
pressure
on
I know, but this is what I'm sort of looking at, is if this is the way this whole side's going to be built and this whole assault's going to be built, surely they should fucking look at, like, how do we actually give him some support?
He needs something. He needs a protector around him, someone who absorbs the hits, someone who takes care of the taggers. Yeah, McCreary, you would think, would be almost the obvious one for that, but is he ever coming back?
No, I don't. I think you don't need McCreary. McCreary would be helpful.
In terms of a bruiser, someone who lines up a tagger and lets them know that they're being watched.
But what I was looking at was, like, they actually need... You're not going to get an equally good midfielder, obviously, but another really good mid who can alleviate some of the pressure from him. Because right now, it's just you focus on him and that's it. It's done. If you had, like, let's just fucking, I don't know, pick a relatively decent midfielder.
Crisp?
No, I meant from another side. Because Crisp, fucking hell. Jeez. But let's say DeGoey was playing well and all that sort of shit. At least it sort of takes the focus off him and lets him get a little bit loose. But I mean, if you went out to opposition and got, like a Clayton Oliver, as I've been saying the last few weeks, and he was having a good game, it's going to take a lot of pressure off him. And that's what they're really missing. They're missing that. Darcy Cameron, I know he's had a pretty good year, but geez, it's funny we get all these forward rucks. They all lack something. Grundy was really good at getting taps, but wasn't great around the ground. Cameron's really great around the ground, but isn't so great with taps to advantage. Cox is sort of better with taps. Probably not so good around... I mean, he's good marking around the ground, but probably doesn't get enough of it. This is why I'd just go, fuck it, let's just play more. You know what? Play someone who can potentially do it all.
But that also shows too that, again, like the structure of the side when it won a flag last year is all those role players were overlapping and complementing each other. And we've lost some of that. You're highlighting issues with those players there, but their compensators are not on the field at the moment. So you're having to carry and expected to do more yourself, and they're just not capable of doing it. That's where that skill level sort of comes into effect when it's up here, but you're exposed a hell of a lot more when it's down here.
Well, it's actually interesting. You go back to last year, because Sam McClure said Collingwood's missing Mason Cox. That's the sort of input they're really missing. And Kane Corns took in a task, Mason Cox only gets 7-8 possessions. How much can they be missing him? Which I think is sort of a ridiculous statement given the stat that Kane Corn should also be looking at, it is the hit-outs, which Cox gets a lot of. But if you go back to last year, I can't remember the exact order of things, but Cameron and Cox got injured around the same time, and then
Frampton filled in
for a little bit. McStay filled in for that one Brisbane match, then wasn't much later. McStay got injured, and then Frampton filled in for a couple of games. And then Cox came back for that GWS game, was BOG. But then Cameron came back a week later and then rucked, became the regular ruck again. But he was really struggling. So obviously whatever injury he had was really impacting him. And come to that Brisbane game, round 23, where Cox comes on as a sub and plays as the ruck and really, aggressive sort of display. And it seemed that said to the coaching staff, you know what, I think Cox is going to become the preferred ruck at the moment. But the point I was going to make is the ruck was a fucking terrible last year. We had like different people going in and out of there, had injuries to ruck, but the midfield actually did a really good job. And the thing is, Cameron's actually had a pretty good year, but the midfield has just fallen away. So it's really interesting dichotomy in terms of how does that work? What's missing in the synergy of ruck to midfielders? Where are the midfielders when they're not winning the ball?
You even see a little bit, and again, it's that it was synergy that made me think of it. Is the way that Bobby Hill's running around at the moment, trying to be a human highlight reel and not pulling very much off. There's no support around him as well, and it's almost like, look, he's skilled, he's fast, and he's evasive, but who's fucking there presenting, or who's there assisting when it's needed? Yeah. No one's getting to the contest as quick as him, and he's left on his own more often than not. It's just that, again, that synergy of helping each other out or running to the right spots in a rapid manner is dropped away.
He'd be an interesting one to actually throw in the middle, play like a genuine rover from yesterday.
He's too light though, isn't he? He'd be crushed.
Yeah, but I mean, Nick Dacos can't be much heavier than him, and you'd rely on him to just get the ball and just run. So
he'd pull that off, all right.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I've had a laugh about with Bobby Hill is, geez, and I actually reckon Geelong started picking this. Any time he's got a player next to him, he's going to try that dummy and sidestep.
That's on there. Everything has to be like an attempt at a highlight reel. Sometimes you just got to get back to the basics.
Well, that's the thing. First option. Sometimes just go for the first option. It doesn't have to. And I thought Nick did that actually pretty well. He didn't sort of always try and back himself to do the fucking miraculous. Sometimes just drive the ball forward. I mean, the one that shits me, the one I really, really hate is when someone gets a mark or a free kick, and then they're standing there, and then someone runs past and they handball it, and the guy takes about one step and then kicks it. So you could have fucking done the same thing a little bit earlier,
I mean, the only time that you'd ever do that is if you're on the outskirts of your distance, and there's a bigger kick standing there off to the side to take.
But also, they're going to get a few more steps extra, than you. So it's just.
It's either that, I guess, the momentum of running gives you a little bit more punch to the kick. I don't know. I think a lot of the time it's just like they feel that's what they're meant to do.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, you often see that with ruckman when they sort of look and they just handle. It's like, I'm pretty sure you could have just done the same thing. Was it a mistake to move all the line coaches from their positions?
Oh, history will tell you something about that, probably.
Graham Wright doesn't come back. Who should you get his position? Would you consider someone like Adam Simpson?
I think the thing you need with the right position is you need to be a hardball deal breaker. Is Simpson capable of doing that sort of thing?
Well,
Does it have to be an ex-coach that comes in and does that?
I'm just imagining it's going to be a football person.
I just want a bit of see you next Tuesday, I think, to run that job. And yeah, because we've talked about it a little bit in the past. I think we're the fucking bunnies when it comes to trades. I mean, who we are in itself bumps the price up immediately. No one wants to fucking deal with us. But there's got to be ways of making this stuff happen. I just think you need a real fucking ass... is that the right term? Ball breaker, or whatever the phrase is to go in there and work hard and deal hard, not just roll over at the 11th hour.
We can bamboozle them. Joe Biden, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, it's just sort of... I feel when we do get someone, we tend to pay fucking overs.
Oh, we do. I actually said it last week. I would rather they took a hard line even if it cost them in the short term, just to say this is where we're coming from. Actually, what I would have preferred about 3-4 years ago is for the club to say, look, we're so deeply traded into the future. Let's just stay out of trading for now and come back with an even keel. We sort of always seem to be trading into the future. And every time we've traded the future first round, it's fucking bitten us really badly. And they're not going to do it because they'll just keep trading future first rounders. The one positive at the moment, unless the AFL changes the rule, is Thomas McGuan's tracking really well. So as a father-son, he's a prospect, but obviously he'll be a couple of years away size-wise and all that. But at least potentially that's some quality that will come in that,
Will help Nick.
Yeah.
The problem is I think you've got to address the spine as well.
I think they've got holes everywhere.
Yeah, you need a key forward and you need a key defender and some quality on the wings. 2 developing mids not so much developing in Nick's case, but if Thomas McGon's as good as what it looks like, then you can start building that side again and getting the middle right, and then the peripheries can come as they may.
Yeah, you know, really look at it like I keep saying, it's like a Tom Hafey side. It's just some quality at the top and then scattering of role players and journeymen and all that, and they all play well in the system. I mean, you look at go back to 81, 82, 81, well 77, 79, 80, 81, they made grand finals, and 78 they made a prelim. And in 82, the passion went out of the list because of issues with Hafey's coaching style, and they finished 11th or 10th or whatever it was. So it shows you how much intent has a bearing on outcome.
Maybe we're fucking visionaries. Maybe our talent scouts are watching the lesser leagues and saying there's not much there. Maybe, I don't know, we're thinking out of the box.
I don't know.
Time will tell.
Time has told.
Probably tell a very...
You worried about competing against these other sides who've had access to the draft?
Yeah, look, I think North's going to be a great side for a while, and I think Gold Coast, if they can get over themselves, are going to be good. Carlton, I know you live in fear of every minute of your life, but they've ridden that wave in coming into the now we're gonna when does the Tasmanian compromise? I think we should work this out one day. We talk about it all the time. It'd have to be the year after next.
Should we move to Tasmania?
Yeah, or next year, end of next year, whatever the fuck it is. Surely that's the start of them stockpiling talent, and that's going to give them the first 48 picks in the first round.
Do we have any Tasmanians on the list?
Hey?
Do we have any Tasmanians who can offer back?
No, I don't think so.
Because I thought going back to when Gold Coast and GWS came in, that was when Buckley was turning over the list. We're going to the draft, and the draft is compromised, whereas what we should have been doing should have been going straight to those new licenses and saying, hey, do you want Dale Thomas, if he was going to leave, because obviously that's what happened, give us Jager O'Meara at that time or whatever.
So the other hard thing is we really don't have a lot of quality that's going to be of appeal to anyone to trade out. I think we talked about it during the week about, was it Kelly said in Buckley's book or whatever it was about, they probably should have traded out a few of the 90s players. Well, you look at our 23 side and who would you trade out? To get value in, I think
you wanted to go out.
Well,
you wanted him out. You said you're driving the Uber to get him and take him elsewhere.
29 at the start of next year. He flitters between a B and an A. He's got some value. If he went to a club that was contesting, he's a fucking great finals player. He'd have some currency, but look, I'd sort of think we'd maybe get on the cusp of a first rounder for him. You're not so sure, but
coming off this year, no way. I think you'd get.
But if he's got the OP and those clubs might look at that and say, "Well, we can manage that and fix it," all that sort of thing. Yeah, but he's great, and I'd hate to lose him. But if you want to give up something of quality to get something younger of quality back in, that's a potential.
I think sort of the problem there is the clubs like, let's say the ladder finishes Sydney, Carlton, Essendon, I don't know, bloody Port Adelaide or whatever. Those are the clubs who'd be looking at or the ones that don't win the flag would be looking at well, here's the sort of guy we need. But by virtue of them finishing where they have, their first pick's going to be 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So unless you, and I think Collingwood's got the bloody balls to do it, unless you sort of say, you go turn that 16 into a top 10, then we'll fucking talk. They probably would have been better in that sort of situation if he was a free agent and then they got compensated for him leaving, and with being a shit year, would probably get picked too. Yeah, I mean, with DeGoey is an interesting one because physically it's a case of how bad that OP is. You do say he's 29, who knows how long he's got.
The thing is, too, with that at age, and let's assume, and this is obviously a scenario where we're done. We're going to start our descent down the ladder, we're going to stockpile lower picks, probably trade them for nothing, but we're going down. We don't need a player of his quality to help us go down. He's not going to do anything. If we win those extra couple of games, what fucking difference does it make? Once you start that trajectory down, you're far better off playing the systems we've said a million times. Go as low as you possibly can go. Get the good picks, whether you do something meaningful with them, whatever, fucking hopefully keep them and get some quality in. You don't need that type of player hanging around. It's not going to do anything. That's the only thing that I can sort of back it up with.
Do you think Collingwood's going to do that? Not the Goey specifically, but do you think they're going to go down to come back up, or do you think they're going to just try and moneyball their way out of this?
Well, I think they'll definitely try and moneyball, but whether that pays off or not, that's the biggest gamble, I think.
Oh, it's a huge gamble. I think we spoke about it last week.
You're shooting yourself in the foot of redeveloping and building a list.
You go back to, like I said, last week was Hawthorn tried that to stay up there, and Richmond tried that, and that's typically when it all goes to shit.
Geelong, they tried it for 10 years and they pulled off a flag, but that was on the back, like what you said, of getting the likes of Dangerfield and Cameron. If you get a couple of elites in, the world can change pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But, I just don't think we're going to nail anyone. Anyone that is potentially coming out of something is immediately attached to us. And then I think they just use that as leverage half the time to either for the media, sell clicks, and for the other club, they use it as a threat thing to get them to come and play ball quicker.
Tip for this week?
Hawthorn by 10 goals.
What's your serious tip?
Hawthorn by 9 goals.
Is that your serious tip?
Hawthorn by 7 goals.
Seriously?
If we're serious, they need a spark. I think it's going to be harder to have that spark come against the likes of Carlton, Melbourne and Brisbane and a couple of big ones that we're coming up against. Hawthorn are gettable for us. They lost... Who they lose to this weekend?
Oh, they beat Fremantle.
Did they? Oh, they came back, that's right, yeah. Oh, then we're doubly fucked. Well, they're coming off a spirited victory. What have we come off?
Spirited loss.
We've had a few of those the last couple of weeks. But, look, you need a statement game. I've said this for a couple of weeks now. That he's really going to say, well, enough. We've got to arrest this fucking free fall at the moment and do something of a fucking very positive nature. I just don't see... We have 4 quarters in us at the moment. The last quarter this week was where we fucking lost the game. The same as
that is one thing. Is outside of that North game in the free since the bye, the Essendon, Gold Coast, and this one, we're faded in the last quarter.
We got to. I mean, if an opposition side is thereabouts with us, they must be confident going to that last quarter that we're probably done.
I asked this a little while ago. I mean, Collingwood lost that mystique of running over the top of an opponent because I don't feel it. I watch the game and think. Second quarter, I'm fucking dreadfully afraid of. I think that's where the lead's going to establish, and that's what we're going to be chasing for the rest of the game. And then about the last 15, 20 minutes of the last quarter, I think we're just going to fucking piss fart around. I know, like, against Essendon, we sort of narrowed the gap, but that was like, the red time stuff that often happens when a side's 6 goals up, and then they just go, fuck it, we're done for the day. And they just take their foot off the pedal, and you get a few junk time ones that makes it look a lot closer than it really is. I don't know what's happening in terms of their fitness and all that sort of shit. Obviously, one thing that we spoke about earlier in the year is with all the injuries, they probably haven't been able to manage their loads and all that sort of stuff. But, look, we're talking about a statement game, but if the last 2 weeks weren't opportunities for statement games...
That's the problem. That's where it all falls down. You've been playing for the last couple of weeks for a crack at second, third position on the ladder. Third position, I think it was. And you've failed dismally. And
you failed against, like, Essendon's... No, not criticising them, but they're not that great a side at the moment.
They were shit house against Melbourne the other night. Melbourne without Gawn and Petrarca.
Yeah.
Not that really should have made a difference, but they made them look second rate.
Yeah,
which is probably what they really are.
Well, that's the thing is, like,
And what does it say about us?
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, I look at Essendon and think Zach Merritt's a really great player. They've got some really good young talent coming up, but the reason I've backed Carlton for the last 7 years is because I think the top end's really good, like really good with Curnow, Walsh, Cripps, McKay, Wiedering. I think it's a really fucking...
And having the umpires on your side every week certainly helps.
So, whereas I think, Essendon doesn't quite have that at the moment. And Sydney's another one. They've got that cream at the fucking top, really, really good players. So, this is the thing we lack, is just that quality across the top, and you had like the going and more regress into B to C graders, and you haven't really had anyone come up and go, hey, I'm going to build on my 2023 and go to the next level.
No, that's the...
you probably... I mean, you talked about it with a lot of frustration that, you thought Hill could have had like an elite year, but he's been...
disappointing.
Yeah, he's really tried to play like a highlight reel, and it's been spasmodic in his output. And then around him, who do you look at and go, who's improved on last year? Maybe Cameron. Cameron was injured last year, and that's about it. And Nick, but that's about it. Any final thoughts?
No. Just fucking win. I'm sick of this losing shit already. It's been 3 fucking games.
I think they're Hawthorn's obviously a problem side, so I think
They're a problem side for us. You know that?
I'd like to really.
They trouble us.
I'd like to really believe we just go out there and make that statement, but I think Hawthorn will smash us, and that'll be it.
10 goals?
It'll be the typical Collingwood loss that we do. We'll make it look a lot better than it should be, but I think there's some tired bodies for whatever reason. Maybe the short start, round 0, all that sort of shit has just accumulated injuries and all that sort of stuff.
I mean, there is reasonable factors there. It's just exposing a lot of other problems, though.
Yeah, look, but the concern the last 4 games is just that absolute lack of intensity around the ball and around the opposition ball carrier. That is really worrying, and that sort of, I think it's an accumulative thing, but it's not just that, we're not getting our system. Sorry, it's not that we're just not fit enough. We're not getting our systems right. It's all fucking broken down, and it's like, where do you start fixing it? And the only way I think you could really start fixing it is if you had a draw like Carlton, so you had a few bunny games that you could really, run into form, but we haven't really had that little run, and probably the one we should have had was fucking North, and we fucked that up. But
Yep.
I just think there's a lot of problems then that's going to take an off-season to even address, and where they go from now, I don't know. I think it's actually really interesting that McRae himself is looking pretty frustrated now, and he's saying all the typical life coach things he says, but he looks pretty frustrated, like, I don't know how to fucking address this other than we're going to work at it. But,
No, I've no doubt they're trying, but whatever they're trying is just not working.
Obviously, I'm saying, I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying, he's looking like we're doing these things, but it's not paying off for whatever reason.
Yeah,
and maybe it simply is, as he said, enough players have lost that bit of hunger, and maybe the reality is just for a year, this is where they're going to be. They're not going to have the hunger that they need, and they'll have to reset and watch someone else win the flag and then go, oh, I remember that feeling. I like that. Let's work our way back to there.
We crashed this year. The rebuild starts. I don't think there's another tilt next year.
I think they'll try and moneyball their way back into another tilt.
You'd want to make some impressive fucking pickups though to turn it around.
Oh, well.
You're gonna have departures. You're gonna have a lot of older boys hobbling around for another year. That never generally ends well.
The departures don't. I think they'll keep Pendlebury another year. So
Well, that's a given. And I think they'll give Sidey another year by the looks of things.
How, I don't know about. I think Mitchell, I don't know. Cox, I don't know.
Mitchell's still only 31. He'd run around another year. Depends on how he gets over this foot thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's my concern, is at that age, how you recover. It's not like, you're 22 and then you've had...
Leo's going to be... I think he'll go around again, obviously, but you're just going to have to look at him at a 50-50 proposition. The big boys don't slow down, they just stop. And that's generally, it's not them, it's the bodies that let them down. And he's been such a crash and bash warrior for so long, it's not surprising parts of him are starting to break off.
Injuries aside, obviously you'd want your Kerno types, but I think with Kruger and McStay sort of there for next year, if Kruger can stay upright, I think he's shown enough to suggest, he can play a role.
Really getting buoyed by his performance on the weekend was good. And
he plays with some aggression, which I really like. So that's not my worry. And as we showed last year, we had a patchwork forward line. So the way they play, their style they play, is really about the counter-attack out of the fence. So they've got to address that.
Yep.
And the midfield. Mm-hmm. So they're the two things they really into. So the forward line, obviously I'd want, like I said, a Colonel or something. But what I think they really need is they need a genuine A-list midfield to help Nick, even if it's just to take pressure and focus off him. And they need to look at a genuine rebounding quality defender. So I'm just going to sound like shit, but Markov and Noble are really good battlers, but that's what they are. They're battlers. I'd really like someone with silk coming out of there. And I think what they need to do in the off-season is just look at certain plays in that side and go, these guys aren't going to bring us there again. It's time to rejuvenate around them.
Yep.
And these guys we've spoken about often enough, and I know, enough people sort of defend them when they play that one good game out of 8, but it's not fucking good enough. So I would hope that after this season they look at it and go, you know what, let's start striking lines through certain names and looking at alternatives. Anyway, I think I've asked you for final thoughts, have I?
Yep.
I don't care anymore. We'll potentially see you next week.
Yeah.
Later.
See ya.